ones who gods care about is themselves.
So this is my vow.
All gods will die.
All right, I'm back again, and I'm here with Joselito. What's going on?
Hey, what's going on?
So, we just saw an early screening of the new Thor movie, Love and Thunder.
Yes, Love and Thunder.
Yeah, so we just got out of the theater watching it. Got a lot of feelings about it. Let's start off with, what did you think?
I didn't have a lot of expectation going in because I had a feeling it was going to be a certain type of movie, and it actually was that type of movie. I'll say that it's an entertaining movie. I'll say that it's entertaining, but it fell short of what I wanted it to be. But I enjoyed it as a movie.
Okay, I enjoyed it too, but I also felt like with the director, Mr. Waititi, his stuff is just so dense with stuff. It's like quick-witted humor.
Yeah.
You're watching it, but at the same time, there might be stuff going on over your head as well. While I was watching, I was thinking, like, I need to watch this again because I know it's like a whole bunch of stuff I'm missing. Not only jokes, but even other stuff that might be going on because it's just so much stuff all at once. And you really, truly can't take it in, I feel, in one sitting. It's like, I know I missed a lot of stuff, even though I was hanging on to the story and stuff, but it was just so much going on. A lot of shorthand, a lot of things that just was happening, and some of it was kind of like tied into the previous movie and things like that, and it was just a lot, and you just kind of had to quickly get acclimated to what was going on because it wasn't really waiting for you, you know.
Yeah, that's the thing I was worried about with this movie because this director is known for being very kind of like winking at the audience with his humor, and I was worried, and actually my worries were came to light, and it was exactly what I was worried about, that I thought that this movie was kind of a culmination from his other movies where I thought that he was kind of going overboard in terms of his style of humor where the subject matter is serious and you can have jokes in it, but I thought it was too much to the point where it kind of negated the main villain and the seriousness of the subject matter. And it also, I noticed too, as a writer, the characters, all the different characters in the movie, they almost talk the same. Because that humor style where it's just a lot of rambling. Every character was doing that. And so I thought that kind of like made it harder to distinguish. I mean, yes, when you watch it, Thor is Thor and Jane is Jane and Valkyrie is Valkyrie, but as you watch the movie, I noticed that the way that they talked almost became like if you close your eyes and couldn't know like if it was a male or female, you wouldn't be able to distinguish which character was talking because they were all talking with the same type of cadence. And that's one of the things that as a writer you learn. One of the things you have to learn is to find a way to have your characters talk so that their talking doesn't sound like everybody else. And that's, I think, one of the weaker points of the movie. It's not a deal breaker, but it definitely, I think, affected it for me in terms of the impact of the movie for me.
That's fair. I never thought of it like that, but that's true. Because everybody's kind of quippy. And this is like an open discussion, so there's spoilers and stuff. But I thought it was very interesting how it starts off very heavy. You don't know what planet or anything he's from, but basically a father and his daughter crossing the desert. And you don't know how they got out there or why they're out there. And his daughter ends up passing. For some reason, he gets up and starts walking. He sees something. I thought it wasn't going to be real. You come to find out, he was looking for this God, and he found the God, but it was after the fact that his daughter died, and he kind of gave up all hope. And he goes to the God looking for help, or just to be like, I found you. And then the way the God reacted to him, that kind of, thought nothing of him or his people, because he's saying, we're the last ones, I'm your last believer. And he was like, well, when you're gone, I'll have others. And he was very dismissive. And even though I thought that threw off the tone a little bit, the way he acted, the way that scene was, it was even things where he threw fruit at him and stuff. It was like, it was just so contrasty to the situation. Like, sometimes I think stuff that's heavy should be heavy, and you can do it without making it a joke or making somebody seem like they're a joke. And sometimes I think that defeats the moment, you know, especially when you have all these heavy themes. There's a lot of heavy themes in here that was treated very lightly, and I thought they were messing up, in a way, good opportunities for some weight. Because sometimes you don't want it to be depressing, but sometimes you want something that's going to make it stick to your ribs because it touched you in a certain kind of way. But if everything's a joke, then it's already hard enough to have movies that you feel something could happen. You know, like there's some stakes to it. It's very hard. And so when you don't give it a time to even let the viewer even attempt to think that it could be possibly some stakes that's going to happen, it just kind of takes the air out of it. So you just kind of watch and waiting to see what's going to happen next versus just hanging on to the thing that just, you know, happened.
Yeah. I mean, that intro scene, the levity, while I understand that from the perspective of the god that was just being just callous towards him and treating him as a joke, we could envision like maybe that's how some of the old school type gods treated their worshippers, that they were beneath them. But it's almost like when I saw the way that he acted towards him, I literally saw the director standing there. It's as if it was coming from the perspective of what I think the director might feel about the whole subject, in terms of like whether or not, you know, just very no seriousness to it. And I get that the levity is great, but again, it just feels like this movie, like I said, I liked the movie, it was entertaining, but it loses the impact of the subject matter. It's just, there's so much like constant, right when you're getting to a part where it starts getting serious, it's like throwing a joke, and it's like, when are we gonna stick to the I mean, I felt like it was tilting almost too much to the jokey side, where one of my favorite parts in the movie was the only stretch of the movie where there was like the seriousness, when Valkyrie, Thor, and Jane are all tight, you know, in the negative realm or whatever.
That was beautiful. Yeah.
And it's all black, there's no color, and how he's talking to each one of them, and how he's saying like,
that was powerful.
That was like, and I wish
like
that the movie had more of that.
Me too.
And he could have, and the story could have still had that, where one of the things I think that they kind of glossed over is, one of the things I think that was a kind of like a big waste of time, was the abduction of the children, and how the children were involved, because the children didn't really serve. Like when I watched the movie, I never felt that the children were going to be in any danger whatsoever. I mean, if with the director, there was no way that any of the children would have been killed, or any of the children would have been tortured. That would have just been overboard. And it was, I think, done more to like make it more like a family friendly film, but at the same time, it's like I just felt like it's great that the kids are included, but they're not really in danger, and there's no stakes. I would have rather had where the God Butcher, Christian Bale, is defeating these gods, and then you could see as he's killing each of the gods that he's killing, you could see that that's the tension, and that could be the story, that could be the moral that he's trying to give to them. Not just that they're ignoring mortals, but they're finally getting to know what it's like to face death, something that they've never really faced before, and why they dismiss worshippers, because worshippers are just mortal to them and will just pass away.
That would have been a great story.
Yes, I thought that was what was going to be kind of covered to add to the weight of the thing, but they kind of glossed over it, so it didn't. Only until the very end for me did I kind of empathize with the God Butcher, but nothing about him, even the fact that he had a daughter. I didn't really. The reason why I didn't really sympathize with him, not when she died, but the fact that he captured the children and put them in danger, that made me think he's not really a father. He's more just a narcissist. Because if he was a real father, kind of like the way Thanos is that weird villain where you kind of have this weird respect, because you notice how Thanos interacts with children. He has this like fatherly adoration towards children, which you wouldn't think a tyrant like him would have. That's what I thought that the God Butcher would be like, where he would kill the gods, but he would have this kind of like a sacred rule where he wouldn't hurt children because his own child was killed, and so he would treat all children like people he'd want to protect. That's where I thought it was kind of threw him off, and it didn't give me any sympathy for him, because once he wants to put children in danger, it's like I have no sympathy for a villain like that. He didn't come off to me as a real father, because if he was a real father, even though his daughter had died, he would have treated all children as if, you know, they were his own children and he wouldn't want to hurt them. In the same way that Thanos also has this like adoring, you know, even though it's tyrannical and crazy, adoring love for children in that same way.
That's a good point. And I was kind of tripping off the fact that he would, even though I didn't know if he was if he really meant it when he put the children in danger or not, but the fact that he even thought to even use them as a piece, like there's other things he could have did to lure Thor to him without involving the children. I thought, as a father, why would you even play with that? And the thing about it is, with him being a father, I should have felt like, well, he wouldn't hurt those kids, but I almost didn't really know if he would or not. I couldn't tell if he was really doing it as a ploy to get Thor to come out there, or he really going to hurt those kids. And then also mentioning, what you brought up with that part about him, speaking to Valkyrie and Mighty Thor and Thor. In that scene, I like how intimate it was. I like how he kind of broke them down and related to them, but still had his mission. And also, when I saw that, the way he was acting, I was thinking like, okay, he could play the Joker as well. If I see him in the future as playing the Joker, I'm like, as good as a Batman he was, he would be a great Joker as well, if that ever came down the line. But, and also the thing with the kids, like you said, like even that way the kids are dismissive, and Thor being uncomfortable talking to the kids when he was in there, like he was projected there, and he was like, the kid was like, get out of here, or I'm done, or just all, it's just like even intention, it was just this smart comments and dismissiveness, and just like, let it be some weight.
Like in those movies where, like, when they're trying to rescue, like, people, and somehow they get to the place, and they're trying to whisper to them to help them escape. You always feel like tense, like, oh my God, hurry up, because the bad guy might come in and find you in there.
Right.
And all the times that Thor was talking to them, like, you never got the sense, is the God Butcher gonna like walk in on him talking to them? Like, there's no, I never felt like there was that tension that the kids, like, oddly enough, I thought the kids were actually safer being in that cage, because as long as they were in the cage, they were never going to have to be involved in the actual fighting whenever the God Butcher was on some other planet fighting other, the other gods and trying to kill other gods. Yeah,
because even if they would have used the angle of him trying to protect them on the under or something, but even if that was the case, they didn't have anything that tied that together, so it really just seemed odd.
What they could have done is he could have been capturing children, not capturing them, but kind of taking children whose parents were killed and then recruiting them, because he's gonna say, look, your gods didn't save your parents. Kind of in the same way that Thanos is basically recruited Gamora when she was young. In that same way, that he could have been recruiting his army of the kids eventually where they're going to grow up and become future God. But I mean, that's just throwing it out there, but that's a perfect example of how you could have utilized him having kids in a better way, because he's going to make them see that their belief and their faith is a stupid thing to have, because you can't rely on gods. And that could have been a perfect thing. But again, like you said, like every scene with the kids, like Heimdall's son, it's just there's no seriousness to it. You're like, you're never worried that the kids anything's gonna happen to them.
And even it's the stuff with the name, like his name was Ansel or something, and said, call me Axel, you know.
Astrid.
Astrid. Yeah. That banter is just like, okay, you're in danger and you're arguing about somebody's name.
Yeah,
you know, and it's just like, and the kid want to claim his new name. It's like, okay, the tone was just so off because parts of it was kind of like, man, I love to watch this with the kids because the kids' empowerment part, no, this is neat. But then also they show Thor's butt and they do a lot of cursing in it. And it's a whole bunch of innuendos that's obvious. And it's just like, so, you know, yeah, you trying to pretend, like you said, you throwing these kids in there to make it like a family film, but it's not. It's not.
The way Zeus gets killed, I mean, that's pretty like, that's pretty like jarring.
Yes. Like, and they played off like it was a joke, and that's Zeus.
Yeah, exactly.
And you know, it's just like, even if it was a joke, it's almost kind of like certain things you don't mess with in a way.
And I just thought the funny thing is I don't know if they realize it or if that's the joke in it of itself. Thor is trying to recruit the gods to help him from a guy who's killing gods, and he ends up actually killing Zeus, which is actually what he was trying to prevent in the first place. That's why I was like, you know, I didn't get that.
And they didn't have no concern or felt bad or anything. They just went on, got his weapon, got his lightning bolt, and left.
Exactly. And he kept the lightning bolt. It's not like he returned it to the other Greek gods. He just pretty much kept it. No apology. He didn't go back there and say, hey, I'm sorry I killed Zeus. And, you know.
It was all over the place. But things that came up that I thought was fun and entertaining was like the actors who played Thor and played Loki and stuff. So you had Chris Hemsworth's brother playing him. You had, what's his name from Bourne Identity? Who played Loki. And it was interesting to see them guys on there again because they're always kind of entertaining. And then also for them to, another tragedy was happening with the kids being stolen and stuff. So they were like, you know, maybe we could do a play about this. So I thought it was kind of neat and funny that the actors was more concerned about their next play than they were about what was actually happening. So I thought that was kind of funny.
Because he had played in the previous movie, right?
He's in Thor Ragnarok when they did a play about Loki sacrificing himself, and they did a play in Loki's honor.
Matt Damon,
that's it. So it was good to see them. So stuff like that was cool. I thought the designs of the worlds were beautiful. They were like epic, just like huge and just full. And I wish we could have seen more of it instead of all this just passing by. But it was just like really, really done well. It was interesting, the whole story with Jane Foster. I know it's from the comics and they did an interpretation of it. It was interesting the way they did it. It was cool to see her. I think I took it better than I thought I would because it is... I don't know, man. It seemed like it's just been a thing lately of the characters that you go to see the movie for are getting replaced right in front of your eyes. So like you go in for one thing and they're giving you something else. And it's like, well, that's not on the title. Or that's not...
the title is definitely a bait and switch.
Right. It's like, you know, I thought I was going to go see this movie and here you go. I got the same name. Like we were joking around about the other Jason. Hey, I'm the new Jason.
Yeah, exactly. In a weird way, it's like it's literally like the Matt Damon parody mockery of Thor, of Loki. It's actually like a I don't know if that was intended, but it's literally like that.
Right.
But on the bigger scale with the actual main characters.
Right. You go see a Loki movie that's starring Matt Damon, and you're like, wait, huh? It's Loki, right? Exactly. You remember this? Ha! This is Loki. I'm like, no, that's Matt Damon. So it's interesting. I won't say that I didn't like it. I will say it was entertaining, but it was a lot going on. And like I said, I think I have to review it again, just so I can kind of take it in, which is so much. And my mind is constantly kind of trying to digest it all. And it's just a lot coming at me as far as the spectacle of it, the tone, the words coming out of their mouths, me trying to go along with the storyline, my feelings of the storyline, how I feel about the characters. It's just it's a lot of work. And I don't know, maybe just me and how my mind works, but it was just a lot. And I'll have to see it again.
Yeah, it's definitely something I'll have to see again. It's not that I don't want to see it again, but it's hard. It'll be hard for me to see it again only for the fact that the movie was entertaining, but it was hard for me to get through because it's almost like you're with like a friend and the friend is like non-stop making jokes and you're like, dude, can you just stop? Like, stop trying to be so funny all the time. That's what I felt like the movie. He kept trying to, I don't know if he's afraid that it was going to be too serious because of the subject matter.
There's
but
a
it's
lot
like
of heavy stuff going on.
Yeah, there's a lot of heavy stuff. But then at the same time, there's a lot of stuff that happens that should be heavy, but like the Zeus death, but it's just a throwaway. It felt like, you know.
Or Jane Foster and her cancer situation.
Yeah.
Or the kids being kidnapped. Or the father losing his daughter. Like, it was a lot of heavy stuff, and it just kept on moving on. And I understand it moving on, but the way it moved on was it was a whole bunch of stuff that was done slight, you know, that I had never seen it handled that way.
Yeah.
You know, it's different if it was normally that's how you kind of deal with something like that. But it's almost kind of like everything, all that heavy stuff just offset just so, like, you know, like whatever. Like I said, they took out Zeus. And it was just like, I would even accept some reactions from all the other gods.
Yes.
Like a whole hushing of the whole cathedral, just kind of like getting quieter. Like, what does this mean? They just left.
And the thing that made it hard for me on the Zeus death is that Zeus's character, usually that'll happen to like a character that deserves it, either a villain or just someone that's so much of a jerk that like you're almost relieved. But the Zeus character was a likable character up until that point where the Zeus character wasn't exactly like a bad guy.
Right.
He didn't want to do what Thor was asking. And that was his choice. So Thor actually looked like a bad guy by doing that, by actually killing him, because the odd thing is Thor retaliating was because of a reaction to what Zeus did to Korg. But the odd thing is even when he did that to Korg, for some reason I didn't have any feeling about, not that I didn't like Korg, but I just had this feeling that Korg wasn't really gonna die because his character was just so verbal and jokey that like it just and up to that point I just felt like the director is not gonna, like, the director was almost afraid to really kill off anybody because he wanted to maintain a good feeling from the audience.
Right.
I mean, even at the very, I don't know if you want me to reveal it, but the very end with Jane Foster, even with that, it's just like I felt like that's like it's one of the things that I don't like with those type of movies, where if you're gonna give me a death, just keep it a death.
Right.
I don't like this, like that this person can come back. I don't toy and yo-yo with my emotions.
Right.
When somebody dies, they should die, and then the sacredness of the feeling of sadness should be kept at that. I don't like this, like, oh, they can come back, like that. I feel like that's like just it's a cheating way of doing things in storytelling, in my opinion. I don't like that. I've never liked that. But then that's my own personal thing on that.
I get it. The thing that surprised me that I thought was entertaining and funny, which I wouldn't have thought, Thor's relationship with Stormbreaker. And Stormbreaker being jealous and acting up and having an attitude, and Thor sees something wrong, and the next thing you know, out the side of the screen, Stormbreaker kind of coasting towards his face as if it's going to attack him because he's jealous, because he sees, like, you know, Mjolnir back, and it's just kind of like, hey, it's like you're talking about the old girlfriend with a friend and the new girlfriend walks in on you or some mess like that. So it was kind of funny how they played that. I thought that was entertaining. To be honest, with everything else going on, I wouldn't mind that being the light thing that just kind of comes up to kind of break the tension, versus every situation being broken in some weird kind of way to kind of get past it.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
But I thought that was funny. And I kind of like seeing Valkyrie and how she kind of handled being king of New Asgard. I thought that was kind of interesting, and it was good to see her again. Like I said, it was good to see Jane Foster and it was interesting the way they dealt with it. The graphics were pretty dope, especially when they went to that negative planet thing or whatever
that was
it was.
Good. Yeah,
and I love the fact that with their weapons lighting up was the only source of color, and everything else was still muted and grayed out. But if the, you know, like Stormbreaker was lit up, then you see like a little hint of, you know, red or blue or whatever that was near the light source, and the rest of it was grayed out. So that was pretty neat. Then a good amount of action and stuff. I think the action scenes are better than they were on the last one, as far as not cutting in the middle of the action, like somebody's jumping up and then they get to the peak and then it just cuts off.
Yes.
At least they can finish the flow of the battle, even though some of the battles seem like they're a little mucky a little bit, so I have to see them again, but they look kind of mucky. But at least they was complete versus like cutting in the middle of the action. So, but yeah.
Yeah, it was. I mean, action-wise, the action scenes were great, and also the cinematography and the color and like the different
special effects,
special effects and the realms that they went to, all very beautiful and well shot, and definitely one of the stronger parts of the movie. I'm gonna go back and complain again. One thing again that I thought was another weak part of the movie was connected with the kids being taken, was the whole thing about in New Asgard on Earth, where all the trouble starts happening, and I just felt like it would have just been better if, like I said, if they just focused on the God Butcher and showing at least some scenes where he's actually killing the other gods, because there's also no reference point where when he's finally defeated, just how powerful he is, because you never, aside from the first god he kills, which is just kind of like a weak sneak attack,
right,
you never see him fight against all these other gods to see just how powerful and why Zeus and those other gods were scared of him, not just because of the sword,
right,
but because he was really supposed to be really powerful. But you never got that reference point. All you get is that Thor has a hard time with him, and he needs Jane and Valkyrie to help him, but you don't get the gravitas of how strong he really is to show, like in the standard movies where the villain is going through the different levels, where you're seeing the villain is like the ultimate villain because they're defeating these other adversaries that are powerful themselves. So you wonder, okay, so how is Thor going to be able to, because that god that he just killed seems like he was more powerful than Thor would have been. Stuff like that.
And then also, what was the proof of the other gods being the same?
That's true too.
That's a big stretch to think all gods would be like that, because that guy was very dismissive to the point where I was kind of taken back by it. I'm like, that's interesting that he's like that. But to assume every god would be like that. And then we didn't get confirmation of other gods probably being kind of like that until we saw Zeus. But that was so far later on in the movie.
Yes.
If we would have saw that earlier, they'd be like, yeah, them folks have it coming.
Yeah.
But that god that he came across was the only one of reference, really. And so I would assume all of them would be the same.
There was only the one giant, if you remember, the giant creature that was all like destroyed or fallen. Giant. Gigantic, so you think, this looks like a ferocious god, but that was thrown off by Thor saying one of the nicest gods you will ever meet. So it's like, so then he's not really like, did he really defeat a powerful god, or did he just defeat like a god that's just a giant god, but is actually really nice, cuddly, not very dangerous, like it's just, that's the one thing that I wish that, because I thought that Christian Bale, a great actor, and he was great in this movie. He was wasted in this movie, because it's like he'll say this powerful line, and then all of a sudden there's a joke and a quip, and it just totally just kind of glosses over, like he's like a serious good actor, and it's like you're just burying him in jokes. He's being serious, but then you're trying to you're throwing like a piece of fruit at him. But it's like, this is Christian Bale. He's a great actor. You're kind of wasting him as a villain, is what I thought. So, but it was an entertaining movie. I liked the movie. I'm not gonna give it a negative thing. But I just wish that the director made it a little bit more serious with the subject matter, and with Christian Bale being in it, because I was looking forward to really seeing it, because he's one of my favorite actors in the genre. He's just so good at whatever role he fills in. That I just feel like it was unfortunate that I feel like it was kind of wasted. Meaning you could have probably used any other actor to play the God Butcher, and it would have been the same, because the jokes would have also muted them as well. So why, you could have just used somebody that could have been just the same thing, and it would have been the same effect, because it would have, the seriousness kind of got fizzled out by the humor, but that it's still a good movie in terms of entertainment.
Yeah, I enjoyed it as well. I know Thor Ragnarok was a jolt for me, and with this one they kind of leaned into it even more. So I thought that was very interesting. So I think that if that was a shock seeing Thor Ragnarok, because Thor Ragnarok, with time, I started enjoying it more. When I first saw it, it was a lot to take in, and I feel the same way about this one. It leaned in more of the style and the comedy and all that other kind of stuff. So I think it's going to be one that I'll appreciate more after more viewing. But it was a lot to take in, and it's a different rhythm, and if you're not expecting it or up to speed with it, it will drag you along. And so I think when I see it again, I'll be better prepared for it, and I'll be able, maybe I'll feel the same about it, maybe I might give it a little bit more leeway. But it was, once again, I was trying to chase the train.
I got that sense too from the audience, where the audience was trying to catch up, because it's like a lot of stuff was just kind of whizzing by so fast,
right,
and a lot of the clips were just going by so fast that I felt like the director didn't allow, like, kind of like just like that pause to allow things to kind of sink in. Like, the movie was constantly just trying to like just jump and just bombard you with like, okay, here's the next set of things that's going on, and here's the next clip. Like, just a little bit more pausing would have just helped in terms of, I think the audience, I could sense the audience, they were laughing, but again, like, there were parts where, like, when Zeus got killed, it's like nobody knew what to do with that.
I didn't know if you're supposed to laugh at that or not,
like,
because it's a big deal. But the way it happened to him, and he just falls off in the distance,
it was kind of like a brutal way. Like, it's not, there wasn't anything funny, where it's almost like, again, like, I felt actually angry at Thor more than, you know, because it's like, it still didn't feel justified, because even if Korg was gonna get killed, Zeus was only acting in defense of Thor and the crew, trying to really force them to do something that they didn't want to do.
Right.
So that's...
Like I said, all those moments, like I said, like even when he got the fruit thrown at him, I didn't understand was that supposed to be funny? Like, you could laugh at it and be right, or you could laugh at it and be wrong.
Yeah, and it's...
Like, this grieving father is begging for mercy and help, and the person you're looking for help for throws something at you. Is that a joke, or is that...
I don't know, because...
It's hard to tell.
You just saw the father lose a daughter. Are you supposed... was that supposed to make you angry? But then it was done in such a way that I think they were trying to make the audience laugh.
Yeah. It was interesting. To wrap this up, what's your final thoughts or final words on it?
Good movie. Entertaining movie. But in terms of like a diehard, serious Thor fan, it might disappoint those fans who are expecting this movie to be like the comic, the Thor God Butcher graphic novel. Take some of that, but it's not as serious. So those who enjoyed the movie, I think, should just enjoy it on the superficial level, that it's just meant to be just, you know, like cotton candy. It's just it's just to enjoy visually, but not to really take seriously.
Okay, and I enjoyed it as well. I say it's a lot going on. I said the tone is all over the place. I will admit that this director did give new life to the Thor character in his world, which I appreciate, but it's almost kind of like sometimes stuff just goes a little too far, a little off the rails sometimes. All these movies lately, especially like with Doctor Strange as well, all these movies just seem to be just different as advertised. And I'm trying not to be killjoy or anything like that. And I try to be fair. I try to be open when I watch these things, but I can't help but notice, you know, how the sausage is made. I like when I could just watch, and I've seen a lot of stuff, and I try to be open, and I might know how something is done or whatever, and regardless, I'll appreciate it for what it is. But sometimes when you just see certain things just put in there a certain kind of way, or brought up, or characters introduced, or situations that they're going through that you just know that somebody shoved that on somebody's desk and be like, hey, fit that in there. It just feels like that. I'm kind of insulted by it. I'm like, don't do me like that. You know, I shouldn't see your protocol.
Yeah. I'd like to say that, like, just because that's a perfect example that you brought up, because Doctor Strange in the Madness movie is literally the same as this Thor movie, in that they were advertised in a certain way, but they actually were different. And I think it was intentional. I think they intentionally, for both of these movies, the director and all the people behind the movie, these movies, intended it to appear to be a certain type of movie,
Right.
but actually was a different movie. I think it was intentional on their part, because if people had known how the Doctor Strange or how this Thor movie is really going to be like, they'll still watch it, but I don't think it would be as popular. I don't think it would have the blockbuster numbers.
People are going in from the idea they have of it in their head because of past history.
Yes.
They're going for the idea of how you remembered that person, how you remembered that figure, that hero. We're coming in there based off of previous ideas of what we're going to go see.
And it's not so much that, for me, that they don't have to make it like what the expectations are, but I just feel like they knew what they were doing and they played on people's expectations and they pulled the rug, a bait and switch. I literally think that both of these movies are a bait and switch. They're good movies to watch. That doesn't take away from them being entertaining. But in terms of what the expectations are, they fall well short of what the expectations are, because, like I said, I think these movies are both bait and switch movies in terms of what the audience initially expected from the trailers and all the secret stuff that they saw before the movies actually were released.
Right. This is an interesting one for sure. I guess we both kind of recommend it. I know I want to see it again. Like I said, I'm sure I will. I'm going to definitely see it again. Well, it was great discussing with you, as always.
Yeah, it's a great movie. I do recommend it as well.
All right, so that was Jay and Joselito doing our open discussion right after seeing Thor, Love and Thunder. Until next time, peace.
Take care.
Hey, it's Jay. If you enjoyed my conversation with Joselito, check out our conversations where we talked about the movie The Norseman, Everything Everywhere All at Once, as well as the latest Dune movie. Thanks for listening. Until next time, peace.